My camera is a little slanty because I'm a little slanty. My name is Seth Everett, and today we're going to do 3 separate election shows, and the first one's going to be a hoot, man. This guy is a star on NBC News. He does NBC News in Washington. He also does some national stuff as well. He covers politics. He covers all kinds of news, but I knew him way back in the day, and he's one of the most active Syracuse alums in the world. And I said, you know what? If I'm going to come to Haps, I'm bringing the orange here. And we have to just do it from a Syracuse perspective because, let's face it, that's the only way I'm going to do a broadcast. Let's welcome in NBC News Washington's the man, the myth, the legend, the great Scott MacFarlane. What's up, buddy?
I want you to notice the apparel. It's important when you're on election day to have that game day spirit. So This is my game day spirit.
It's literally the mixture of red and blue anyway.
Hey, it's bipartisan. Bipartisan.
That's how you make orange. I'm going to fix this. This little thing is tilted. Today is a weird day, and I want to start on a serious note, and that is everybody's bracing for violence. Do you genuinely think it's going to get there? Like, do you think major cities are just going to be in an uproar? Like, we can talk about who we project. We can talk about all those things. But do you really think it's as dangerous as it looks?
I know serious people think it is. I know they boarded up the downtown district of Washington, D.C., and I can't remember that happening in my 16, 17 years here. And I know that for the first time in my career, I was trained on how to use and wear a gas mask. Just in case we have to go and be deployed into the unrest, they have gas masks for us. That's never happened. Fortunately for me, I don't have to shave. Everybody else who had a beard or a goatee had to shave it in preparation, just in case they had to wear it. These are smart people who may be overcautious or just being cautious. Could be. But I can tell you, these are things I've never seen before.
That's, wow. I jokingly said, when this is all coming to a head and they say, when will it be over? And I said, after Civil War. It's a joke, but it's not a joke. It's a scary time because I have always been a follower of this stuff, but I've always done it from a very center point of view. I have great respect, and I have listened to Republicans my whole life. My whole life, I have listened to Republicans just like I've listened to Democrats. And I've met Republicans along the way, and I have adored them. I have told the story on a number of social media platforms. I met President Bush when he was the president at the opening of the Nationals ballpark, and it was one of the highlights of my life, let alone my career. And I didn't vote for him, but okay. And it doesn't mean I approve of the way he handled Katrina or Iraq, but I like the guy, and I genuinely didn't have the vitriol. A lot of people blame this on cable news. Do you feel that it's just this rhetoric that is just so dark and evil, no matter which side you're on?
It's interesting you chose that analogy because I came to Washington, D.C. during the first George W. Bush administration. So I've seen a lot of changes and transitions, and the tenor does feel different now than it ever has before. Palpably, when you're in this city, it's a microcosm of what you see across the country. There's a more heated rhetoric. There's more vitriol. When I was a congressional staffer many years ago, I didn't care if the person I was eating lunch with was a Democrat or Republican or shared my political persuasions or not. I just wanted to have lunch with a buddy. And I feel like that type of spirit is sorely lacking in this city right now, on the election day or otherwise. But there are things that give me hope. I mean, I've talked this morning already, texted this morning already with congressional friends on the Republican side and political friends on the Democratic side, and there's a remarkable symmetry to it still. I mean, both of them are both sides are burning off nervous energy. They're both like looking for a hamster wheel to run around. There's nothing to do, and it bothers them. One buddy of mine is going to go bowling today because he's just got to get his mind off things. There's nothing more to do. Yeah. So there's some continuity. There's still some standards. There's still some things that bind both sides, and hopefully our better angels allow those things to bind themselves in the years to come.
You follow the polls. I follow the polls too. And, it's so funny because you have to look at the source of the poll and if the poll is valid and, there's all this stuff that, it used to be, Quinnipiac used to come up with the poll and I was good. That was fine with me. And it just seems like in order for Trump to get reelected, it needs to go so perfect for him that everything he won in 2016, he has to. And I understood last time around because I wasn't a massive Hillary fan. And I looked at the aspect of if you had distrust of Hillary, you didn't know Trump any better. Nowadays, you have this 4 years of what his presidency is like, and you see what the world has become. How could he get all those states? It has to be so perfect. If you look at the model, everybody says he has to win every swing state. That's impossible, right?
Oh, it's easy to make a lot of sports analogies as a sports fan. I mean, the sports equivalent is you're down 3-0 in a best-of-7 series. The poker analogy is you've got the 6, 7, the 9, and the 10. You need to draw that 8 for the inside straight. Those are convenient analogies to make, but sometimes you draw an inside straight. Sometimes the Red Sox come back from 3-0 to win a best-of-7 series. These things can happen, but we all read the same polls. One thing that threw me this cycle, I didn't see in past cycles, is there seemed to be some less than credible polls that are brand names I wasn't familiar with that seem to be blending in with the others. And I'm wondering if one side or the other is finding a way to monetize this industry, to put out a set of polls that are alarming or off the norm as a way to get their name out there or to win favor with one side or the other. So this felt odd to me that we didn't just have those brand name polls to follow. We had other things in the sauce.
It's weird. The whole thing is weird. In your mind, how much has the pandemic impacted this it's a loaded question, but I don't want it to be as open-ended as it is, in that one side had full rallies with with the big crowds and one didn't. Do you think people see that and were affected by that? Because you never saw Joe Biden in front of 10,000 people. You didn't even see him at his convention, in an arena. You never saw that Joe Biden. Does that help or hurt him?
It always felt like a Rorschach test to me, Seth. Like you saw it the way you were going to see things anyhow. We are, because we're in a pandemic, more connected, even more connected than usual to our devices, our TV screens, and our phones. So we are more captive to images. We're more captive to seeing the visual of a huge crowd cheering a man's name. That still has a visceral impact on people. There's still something to be gained from that. And there are people who look at that with disgust, saying, that's not my political persuasion, and that could be a super spreading event. But it feels like everything just cuts down that same partisan line, be it a rally, a policy position, an ad. It's just hard to feel the tug of one side over to the other.
It's so weird. I have been accused of being both sides this whole pandemic, this whole election season. And I'll give you the example. I've lost about 600 to 800 Twitter followers. And I noticed it. And not only did I notice it, but I noticed it because when I tweet things like wear a mask, be safe, like that, I tweeted I didn't think baseball should have happened. I still don't. And I stand by that. And then I tweeted the other day, I thought the Meadowlands, the MetLife Stadium, should have 7,500 to 10,000 fans. They could easily do it safely. And I think it would make a huge difference. I don't know if you saw the Monday night game last night, but I thought that there was something missing. And I've seen stadiums that have had just smatterings of fans. And I think it makes a massive difference. And in New Jersey, I think you could do it easily, like safely, you could really do it. And I've been called a right-wing nut job. It's crazy. I've been called a socialist. I've been called a nut. I've been called all these things. And it's all because, and this is what I don't get about politics, is I don't understand why everything is cut and dry. For example, I respect the Republican tax plan. Very simple. I understand the Republican tax plan. I do. I'm not saying I subscribe to it, but I get it. Why is that tied into wearing a mask? Why if I am economically, and I'm not, again, I'm just suppositioning here, but why if I am concerned about my finances and I want a Republican in the White House because I make more money that way, why am I not allowed to be a mask wearer? Like, why does it have to be so cut and dry? Abortion. Why can I be pro-choice and still like the Republican tax plan? What the hell is the difference?
Yeah, well, extend the analogy further. That you've got my city where people are paid to overcome and build consensus and overcome these political zones they're in, and they can't get anything done. I mean, if your comment about there should be some fans at an open stadium in a football game is viewed as conservative or liberal, then yeah, they can't come to an agreement on a COVID-19 relief plan. They can't come to an agreement on how to extend unemployment, how to get money to local cities and counties that need money. They can't come to an agreement on health care. They can't come to an agreement on anything. And though those are hard issues, that's what this city and these people are about. They're supposed to come here, find agreements, find consensus,
right,
pass legislation. They can't pass anything. They can't pass a resolution that the sky is blue. Simple stuff is eluding them right now. So it's no surprise that if you're dealing with political accusations when you're talking about sports, that when we're talking about actual politics, we're totally stymied.
Yeah, and Trump in his recent rallies, he's been taking shots at LeBron James. There was a whole rally at LeBron James. What the hell has that guy done? Guy stands up for so many people.
I like Mike, or I like Michael Jordan better.
Right, right, because Michael Jordan said that Republicans buy shoes too. Like that was Michael Jordan's line back in the 90s, and we all saw it. We all were brought back because of the ESPN documentary, and we all saw how Michael Jordan stayed away from social issues, and LeBron James doesn't. So let him do it.
In that context, imagine how hard it is now to be a broadcast political reporter and not be accused by one side or the other of favoring the other. If we're this ginned up about everything, including what basketball players say, think of the needle we have to thread, election day or otherwise, in not coming across as pro-Democrat or pro-Republican, and still report on what we see. And when they send a journalist to a news event, they're sending a human being, not a robot. If you see something and if you viscerally feel something when you're a journalist at an event, they want you to say it. They want you to explain how this strikes a human. So if you hear something ugly said in a political rally, you should report that. If you see something that's sad or inspiring at a political rally, as a human, you should say that. That's why they send human beings to cover things. But so with that backdrop, imagine how hard it is to come across as even-handed and fair when you're talking about politics in this day and age.
It's incredible. It's incredible. I wanted to ask you that. It's something I've always wanted to ask you. The decisions you made and when you decided that political reporting was going to be something that you'd cover. I remember going to Syracuse, and I was a freshman, and someone asked me what I wanted to do in broadcasting, and sports wasn't my first bit. And I remember the first couple of weeks, I thought I wanted to do what you're doing. Like, I really did. And I was scared, and I say it, the professors, Don Torrance and Barbara Fote and Dean Rubin, they all scared the bejesus out of me because I paid my dues. Look, I did the buses in minor league baseball, and I worked the overnight shifts, and I did all those things in my paying of dues. But in your paying of dues, how many kidnappings and fires and killings did you have to cover to get to the position that you're at? And if I'm getting too personal, I don't mean to, but just the idea of what was the path that you took that got you to this point, and what did you have to accomplish, and what ugliness did you have to cover to in order to get there?
Oh, I love that question because I think the most untraditional path you can forge. I was spending my first few years out of college, reporting news, which often when you're getting started and you're in cities like Detroit, Cleveland, or Syracuse, where I started, you're covering crimes. That's what drives a lot of local news, is covering crimes, be it fires, shootings, kidnappings, horrible stuff. The worst things to cover? Car crashes, deadly car crashes, because you go to the scene and nobody involved in this tragedy had any warning it was coming. It involves everyday people, and you can see yourself falling victim to it too. So the car crashes would ruin my day when I had to cover those. They ruined my week when I had to cover those. So you'd spend years doing that, And then I realized this is not my passion. My passion is politics. I have a degree in that from Syracuse. My interest has always been politics. So I wanted to be the political reporter. The problem is, so do half the other people in your newsroom. So how do you differentiate yourself? And I realized about 7 or 8 years after I began my career that I was getting nowhere on this. And I wasn't doing anything to differentiate myself. So I did something bold. I decided to come here to Washington, D.C. and get out of media for a while and go work for Congress. Let me try something different. Let me try to give myself an edge. So totally walked away from journalism for a year and immersed myself in political work. It actually was apolitical work. It was government work. I found a role that was kind of apolitical, that wasn't Republican or Democrat, so that I could re-enter journalism after it. But I could learn Congress from the inside out and figure out a way to parlay that in a re-entry into journalism as a political reporter. And that worked. The key was Congress had a desire for me because I was local media and I had media contacts and I had media IQ and I could train government officials on how to do television better. I knew my old buddies, my drinking buddies, would be contacts these congressional folks would want. So I was connected. Right. And then I segued out of that back into political reporting here in Washington as somebody who had a background in reporting, a background in Congress. I was a nice little hybrid skill set type person they wanted to hire. And I had to do something different. And I tell journalists who are 7 to 8 years out, I mentor a few of them. I mentor them on a cyclical basis. This is your moment.
Not after this 30 minutes. But.
Fair enough. But I tell them that this is the pressure point. You want something big, you want something specific in your career, you got to take a chance now, because a very precious few of us just rise and soar through the ranks based on our skill set, looks, and connections. So there's a lot of us who have skill sets. There's a lot of other people who have looks. There's a lot of people who have connections. But if you want to get to a certain spot, you got to try something different. For a reporter friend of mine who was in Virginia and she was trying to get back up to the Northeast where her family was, I'm like, you know what you have to do? You may have to leave the security of this full-time job here in Virginia and try to freelance or string some work together in New England until it happens. You got to take a chance. She did. It worked. You got to gamble. There's a point in your career, no matter what it is, where you got to take that gamble. And for me, the gamble was to go out of media to get back into it.
It's a really unique answer. The context in which I wanted to bring to it is Dan Rather, because Dan Rather fascinates me, because Dan Rather was literally in the right place at the right time. He got assigned Dallas, and he was in Texas, and he didn't know where his career was going. He was not the heir apparent to Walter Cronkite in any way, shape, or form. But it's not November 1963, and Dan Rather's on an assignment, and he's supposed to cover this motorcade that John F. Kennedy is going to go down. He happens to be on the scene for the assassination of JFK, and his star skyrockets because he covered it brilliantly. But he's synonymous with a tragedy, and that was what always scared me. And I said, I don't want to be known for that. That scared me. You did it on a different path, and I applaud what you did. And it's really, really fascinating from this government standpoint, because this day is so polarizing, and there are so many people now that have already voted. It's 71% of 2016 have already voted, and we get this rhetoric every 4 years where, if you don't vote, you don't get a say, and, make sure you get out the vote. And the young people need to vote, and blah, 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 blah. And you hear it every week. Do you think every cycle, do you think this one's going to make a difference? That if you have two ordinary Joes, not Joe Biden, but if you have two ordinary yokels running for 2024, that you're going to get this? Or is this like the lightning rod? And this is why idiots follow Alex Rodriguez, because Trump is a headline, and it's that serious.
I think having everybody this civic-minded, having the potential for a record turnout, is nothing but a good thing, no matter what your persuasion is. Having people engaged in voting is a beautiful thing. What's different this year, aside from the politics? We are in a pandemic for the first time in 102 years, and folks have the bandwidth to go ahead and figure out those absentee ballots, to figure out how to do early voting, to look up your polling place. People have, to a degree, in a certain sense, little more time and wherewithal on their hands than they would during our normal hectic lives pre or post pandemic. But it's also an issue that's driving us. There's nobody without an opinion. There's nobody without a strong opinion. Even undecided voters, whoever they are strongly engaged in what's happening. They just haven't chosen yet. I think that's the difference maker. I would ascribe it more to the fact that we're in a once-in-a-lifetime event that's not only motivating us, but freeing us to do the things we want to get done. Pay the bills, clean the windows, and go vote.
Rob, thank you for subscribing. Anybody else who's watching, if you want, you can check us out. We're going to do 2 more of these. Scott's not. He's going to work his day job. We're going to do 2 more of these, one at 4 o'clock and the other one at 7:30, where we might have some results. And then I'm going to bed because I can't. I saw NBC National is staying on till 4 in the goddamn morning.
Yeah, that's me too. So
that's you. You have to do that too.
So here at the NBC Washington D.C. affiliate, I'm election night. I'm in the studio from 2 p.m. to midnight. But then they want us to bridge to the morning shows just in case something untoward were to happen. I mean, it's not so much election results as is there going to be unrest in this city. In that case, we're very relevant in reporting that. Something that the NBC National News can't do. So we're here for it. I'll just say this. There's an awful lot of assuming that this isn't going to be decided tonight. There's an awful lot of assumptions this is going to be a protracted issue that's going to cause unrest, and we got to be prepared for that. Because if you're not prepared for that, you're going to be caught. You're going to be caught in a jam. But there's a fighting chance we know at the same hour we tend to know, and people got to be mindful of that. Be prepared for the anticlimactic as well.
No, it can be, and I listened to a podcast, the Daily, the New York Times, and yesterday they did give me all the scenarios. So the scenarios, there were 4 of them. One of them's bonkers. The scenario 1 is indications early from the states that report early that the polls are right, and if everything's going according to the polls, this will be a Biden win. Even if the numbers don't add up to 270 by the end of the night, you'll have a pretty good idea because he'll be on the path. And if everything else is right, so that's scenario 1. Scenario 2 is the exact opposite, that everything that every state that Trump had in 2016 starts to report and every one of them goes to Trump. You can have the exact same the opposite thing, but that's scenario 2. Scenario 3 is the muddy one where it's really too close to call in too many states. And now you start talking about recounts, and then it could be days, weeks, maybe even months by the time that happens. And then scenario 4, which is absolutely wackadoodle, is that they could finish at 269 and 269. And I have to ask, what were the founding fathers thinking? Having an electorate that could have a goddamn tie.
Oh, that's part of the beauty of it. See, this is me having this. I have the same debate here on the home front.
Peter says coffee is your friend, by the way, Scott.
I adore the Electoral College because it empowers every state to have a voice. It doesn't just mean that New York and California's votes trump all. So there's a beauty to that. But I think this 269 scenario, which is such a remote chance, but we're talking about. The way they say the way they backstopped it is beautiful. They put it in the hands of the House of Representatives, the elected officials in America who are closest to the public because they're elected every 2 years and they're elected by the smallest group of Americans. They decide. So there's a backstop to that, which is beautiful. And it's not just a majority in the U.S. House. It
has to be every state gets one vote.
It's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous system. It ensures every American feels included in a process. And when you're reforming a country and you want to maintain a country during tough times, you want every American to feel included. And there was an aesthetic beauty to that.
Florida, California, Wyoming, and Delaware all get one vote.
They all get one vote. And it's in tiebreakers, you want to be inclusive.
Oh, that's crazy.
Hey, let me know when the NFL comes up with a good overtime system. We can complain about this once the NFL figures that
out. I'm not. No, and putting that dumb runner on second base in extra innings. Has anyone in the history of life ever complained about extra innings? No, it's the innings 1 through 9 that people are bored to tears with. That's not the issue. As far as the way the candidates handle this, could you see a scenario where Biden concedes tonight?
I see a scenario where he speaks to the nation tonight. And here's the thing you have to know about wave elections. Nothing happens in a vacuum. Things happen in an interconnected way. You talked about 6 to 8 states that are of interest tonight. It's going to be totally unsurprising if all 6 or 8 go exactly the same way, because politics happen in sweeping ways. It's not like somebody's going to win Arizona by 3, lose Georgia by 4, win Carolina by 6, lose Florida by 6. Elections don't work that way. Sporting events do. Elections work in broad strokes, like turning a tanker around. Things happen steadily and in large waves. So it's quite possible we have very good read on things at 9 or 10 o'clock tonight, in which case it wouldn't surprise me if somebody claimed victory and somebody conceded. Choose who you think is more likely in either scenario. But things happen in very predictable ways once votes start getting counted.
I can ask this question entirely 2 different ways, and it's the exact same question. How do we figure out South Carolina? That's the objective, newsy way to ask that question. How the hell does that Legion of Doom member who sits right next to the Riddler and Lex Luthor, Lindsey Graham, keep his office?
I haven't covered Lindsey Graham this cycle. I know I covered Lindsey Graham when he ran in 2008. I've been around here a long time. And Lindsey Graham was known as John McCain's best friend, John McCain's right-hand man, and covering him politically, covering him as a senator and him as a campaigner was very symmetrical to watching John McCain. So I haven't seen Lindsey Graham this cycle. The way you're describing him doesn't sound aligned.
But that's my thing. This is why I'm saying, like, I prefaced it. I have no bias here. I don't judge Lindsey Graham because he's a Republican. That's not my issue with him. My issue with him is just the garbage that comes out of his mouth about black people. And it's just so insensitive what he has said. John McCain never spoke that way. I remember, look, I paid attention to John McCain. Lindsey Graham maybe didn't talk like that when you covered him, but oh my God, the stuff that he has said about the civil unrest and the disgusting nature of the police and all the things that he has said has just been so offensive. And I don't even know Jamie Harrison. I don't know Jamie Harrison from a hole in the wall. I've seen interviews. He seems okay. But I just wonder if Lindsey Graham, Mr. Congress, is going to get reelected today.
I've heard less and less about that race in the last few weeks, which is usually an indication that whatever internal polling or whatever polling people are looking at closely is not showing that it's
5 points. It's close.
It's just not driving the conversation. So I'm interested to see the results tonight, if they are consistent with a race that's fallen off the radar. Fundraising wise, it has not fallen off the radar. Both are scooping up a lot of money.
But they're both raising money. That's why it's so interesting. It's not like he's just out spending him. You know what I mean? Jamie Harrison, this challenger, I don't know him. I don't even know if he's any good. I'm not endorsing him. All I know is I've seen the sound bites and I see all the crap on Twitter, and he drives me mad.
Somebody's got to sit me down and explain how you spend $100 million in South Carolina to win a campaign. I mean, what can you just buy?
Cost of living there.
Just buy the airplanes and fly them around 24/7. And I have a basic sense of what points cost when you're trying to buy TV ads for a campaign, and that's an awful lot of money to have.
And just for the record,
I'm thinking South Carolinians might be sick of hearing about the race. They just might be, based on these fundraising totals.
Just for the record, I do a podcast called The Hall of Justice. I am lucky that I get to reference the Legion of Doom. I can do it. I also do that whenever Florida wants to open up all their stadiums. When your guy DeSantis came out, that was my first Lex Luthor reference. When
let's be very clear. Legion of Doom episodes were far and away the best Super Friends episodes.
They were the best.
Because you had the extended Super Friends too. They threw in Green Lantern, the Flash, Apache Chief. They went balls to the wall. They gave you everybody. That was a presentation compared to the old ones with the Wonder Twins and the dog.
The greatest line about the Super Friends, and we can end it with the greatest line about the Super Friends, Alan Burnett, who worked on the Super Friends and then also worked on like Batman the Animated Series and some of the newer classic animated things. He said that every character was written exactly the same. They all had the exact same personality. And then if for some reason one of the voice guys didn't show up for work that day, you could replace Green Lantern with Hawkman and nothing changes. And I thought that was really, really funny about what cartoons were like.
I also think people need to appreciate the fact that that's a cartoon that had Casey Kasem and Ted Knight as voice actors. They don't do that anymore. They don't make cartoons the way they need to anymore.
Danny Dark was Superman. Trust me. And I named the podcast The Hall of Justice because the slogan is, if you're old enough to know what the Hall of Justice is, you're our demographic. And it worked perfect. It was exactly what I needed. Scott, how can people find you online?
On social media, at MacFarlane News, but also when you see me on NBC Washington, you can see me at NBCWashington.com, and on SiriusXM. If you have SiriusXM, it's channel 124.
Fantastic. Dude, thank you so much for doing this, man. Good luck today. Be safe, please. And you'll do award-winning stuff regardless of the results.
I'll have the Wonder Twins to help me. I'll be fine.
See, that's a good Super Friends reference. Yeah, I guarantee you, nobody in the history of Haps, I don't know how long this place has been open, but I guarantee you they've never had a superhero reference like that. We'll see you today at 4 o'clock and then again at 7:30. So we've got 3 of these puppies, but I'll tell you, the 4 o'clock and the 7:30, they've got a lot to live up to here. Scott was absolutely fantastic.